So I'm joined here with a very special guest here on the podcast this week. Some of you keener-eyed viewers of the podcast might notice that it's not Chris here this week. It's somebody a little bit different. And I'm very, very happy to welcome Marc here with me on the Europuck podcast. Now, I've already done my bit of intro to let you guys know a bit what's going on here. But Marc, do you want to just give a brief overview of who you are and what you kind of do and why this podcast is a great place for you to come and chat to us for a little while?
Well, sure. Thank you, Hayden, for having me on. First of all, this afternoon here in New York, where I'm based out of. My name is Marc Brunengraber. I'm a 49-year-old former hockey player and attorney in private practice in New York. I also am a former editor of a website that was around for about a dozen years called International Hockey Forums. And I also I'm helping run the Israeli National Hockey Society, which is a new venture designed to promote the sport of hockey in Israel and support the Israeli Ice Hockey Federation, which, as you know, is an IIHF member, support the Israeli National Domestic League and its constituent clubs, also help the various hockey schools in the country with the training of youth so that the next generation can play the sport. And, you know, I'm an old man now, but I'm a former player myself.
So not only are you a former player, you're doing all these great things for Israeli hockey, you're also an attorney as well. How do you find the time to do all of this, Marc?
Well, that's why I'm bald now. But, you know, the way I got into Israeli hockey is a little bit of a story. I'm Jewish by faith and ethnicity, so there's the natural connection to Israel as an ancestral homeland for myself and my family. I had been in touch with Evgeny Gusin, who is an Israeli hockey legend and now is the owner of HC Bat Yam, which is pretty much the premier Israeli league club for several years now. He's a legendary goalie in Israeli circles. He played in the Central Red Army, CSKA Moscow minor league system. He also played professionally for Kristal Elektrostal in the old Soviet Union. And then he moved to Israel and was part of, the founding of the Israeli Federation and the domestic league, as well as HC Bat Yam, the club. And they were looking for a backup goalie. Years later, the internet comes around, and I became involved with a website called International Hockey Forums. That had a really nice run for about a dozen years with people from all over the world talking about hockey in all kinds of countries you wouldn't expect it to be in, Israel being one of them. I became active on that forum, eventually became the legal advisor and a part owner of the website and an editor. That led me to meet a whole bunch of different guys, both alumni, administrative, and current players at the time on the national team. And so what eventually happened was there's a guy by the name of Avishai Geller. He was the captain of the Israeli squad. At the time, he had a cup of coffee playing pro for the Alaska Aces, which eventually was in the ECHL, but prior to that, they had been in an old league called the West Coast Hockey League that merged in. So Avishai got in touch with me and basically said he was putting together a charity event in Boston to play against MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where Avishai had actually captained the hockey team back in the day. So he had explained that it was too expensive to bring over the entire Israeli national squad. He was putting together about half the team, and then he wanted to fill it out with American and Canadian Jews to kind of give it a little bit of authenticity. And so he asked me if I'd want to play goal. This was back in 2014, and at the time I said, I'm going to be 42 years old. I haven't really played much in about 8 years, and I don't know that you'd really want me. But he laughed and said, it's a charity game. Just, come down and play. I did. And that led to a whole slew of other games that I helped organize, actually, to bring awareness to Israeli hockey and raise some funds. And what we did was we ended up playing games against a bunch of different NHL alumni teams. And we played also Duquesne University out of Pittsburgh. And we ended up beating the college teams, and we ended up losing to the NHL alumni teams. No shock.
There is still that divide, isn't there?
Yeah, when we lined up to play against the Dallas Stars alumni at the American Airlines Arena in Dallas, I remember I started the second period. I didn't last very long, by the way. I got pulled after, I think I gave up 3 goals on 9 shots in about 10 minutes or so. But anyway, it's fine. I made a save on D. Carbonell. I'll take that with me to the grave.
Perfect.
But yeah, I think when they lined up for the face-off, it was Greg Adams, Bob Basson, Landon Wilson, Richard Matvichuk, Gerald Diddick, and Marty Turco in net. And I remember saying to myself, "What the hell am I doing out here?" But it was fun. It was fun. It was a good cause, and it helped raise awareness. And Israeli hockey really has started to become a little bit more of a known quantity around the world now partly because of the efforts of what we did. And that led to the creation now of the Israeli National Hockey Society, really to help promote the game in Israel among everything, like I said, from the National League and its constituent clubs, help the federation itself, help the hockey schools. And basically, we have a website, israelhockey.com now, that's still under construction, but it's functional. And you can go there and buy merchandise, and you can, make donations, and you can support the program of your choice. And we are also trying to make it a one-stop shop so that you can find information about the domestic league and, about the national team programs and basically the different schools and everything that's going on. So it's an ongoing thing. We're putting up some videos and pictures and things that anybody who has an interest in hockey there can really go and enjoy. Obviously, Israel isn't just important for only Jewish people. It's Jesus's birthplace. It's important to everybody around the world who's Christian faith. It's important to the Muslim faith. And one of the beautiful things about Israeli hockey, contrary to what you see in a lot of the media around the world, for the most part, at least citizens, people who live in Israel proper, they live in peace with each other, regardless of whether they're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Baha'i, Druze. And we actually have in one of the schools, the Canada-Israel Hockey School in the north, in Metula, which is actually run by Levav Weinberg, who's the president of the Israeli Ice Hockey Federation. They actually have had Arab Druze, Arab Muslim, and Arab Baha'i children skate with Jewish children, and it's a great way to break down barriers, and it's kind of a microcosm of what can go on in the world if people come together through sports, and specifically hockey.
I would imagine that feeling of kind of a lot of people not knowing the thing that you love, it doesn't exist, is even more amplified in a place like Israel, where it's not seen as a conventional hockey market. So what's the kind of layout of Israeli hockey like? What's the domestic league like? Are there any comparables that you can make that might make it easier for some other people to think, okay, that's the kind of quality that we're looking at here?
Sure. I would say, comparing it to, say, a North American model, I would compare the level of the clubs more or less to a college club, anywhere from, the 3rd through 5th tier of college hockey in the United States. HC Bat Yam, which is run by Evgeny Gusin, who incidentally is the former president of the federation and who really helped build the league to the point where it's at, as I'm describing it. Really during his oversight, the league went from about 2013, 2014 to about 2017, 2018. It had its kind of golden era. And, during that time, his club, HC Bat Yam, really won a whole bunch of titles. That team couldn't play, and they played in the Continental Cup, and, they were up 3-1 on HYC Herentals, who was the champion of the Beneliga. The Dutch-Belgian Joint League. They were tied 3-3 after 2 periods, ended up losing 7-4. They also were up 3-1 on Churi-Jordan, which was the Spanish National League champion, and they ended up losing that game 5-4 with a goal. It was tied 4-4. They lost with 20 seconds in regulation. Oh. So, they can play, but I wouldn't want to put them against, say the Nottingham Panthers or an EIHL team. That would not be pretty, but yeah, it's a decent league and it's getting better, but it's, in essence, it's an amateur league. When you see Bat Yam play in the Continental Cup, they're usually the only completely amateur club in the competition, they might have, 2 or 3 players that have past pro experience or some high level collegiate or junior experience. But for the most part, after the top line, it's not as deep as a club like you'd find out of the EIHL. Which brings me to, actually something of a British hockey legend who's also Israeli. That's Max Bierbreyer. He's winding down his career now because Max, forgive me, I don't remember if you're 39 or 40, but Max is a friend of mine, and as you know, is something of a Cardiff Devils legend, and in his older age, has played at the second level with Telford and now the Swindon Wildcats. So yeah, I mean, but the top guys like Max Bierbreyer, or you may know of the current Israeli national team captain, Eliezer Sherbatov, who had 1 season in the KHL. He's currently over in Poland, but has played, in Kazakhstan. He's played in the French League Magnus. So the top Israeli guys have played elsewhere. You have, he's also in his later 30s now, but Mikhail Kozevnikov, who's on the Israeli national team and has played for Bat Yam in the Continental Cup. He spent years in the German, the DEL, the Deutsche Elite League, and also DEL2. So there are Israeli players that have some real pro experience, but those guys don't tend to play in the National League very long in Israel because they need better competition.
Absolutely, yeah. I was just going to say...
It's really tough. It's really... last point.
Yeah, go for it.
I apologize. You got to remember, Israel makes do with 1 Olympic-sized rink in the far north of the country on the border with Lebanon. They also have a half-size rink, or a little over half-size rink, where it's only suitable for 4-on-4 plus goalies. That's in Holon, which is a suburb of Tel Aviv. That's where the population center is, and they only have this tiny little rink, and they have to share this rink and the one up in the north, the full-sized one, with figure skating, hockey schools, recreational hockey, every different age group from say U8 all the way up through U20, and then they also have to squeeze in the National League team training. So it's really difficult. And another rink has opened now outside of Netanya, so it's the second full-size rink. It's only open for less than a year, I want to say. So to get to the level that they've gotten as a national team, which is currently in Division 2A, and they're normally in Division 2B, is pretty remarkable considering the lack of resources in the country. And
I can only imagine for you guys, where you're a smaller, tighter-knit community, it sucks even more that there's all of these difficulties, that there's obviously all the sort of politics of the domestic game, and then you throw this pandemic on top of it. It's just another thing you don't need right now, isn't it?
For sure. I mean, we don't even know if the Israeli League is going to happen or not. There hasn't been an announcement that it's been canceled for the year yet, but it's on hold right now. The coronavirus is pretty bad in Israel at the moment, and Israel's under its second wave at the moment, and the country's basically locked down. So hockey, much less God knows how many other things going on in the country, are basically on shutdown now. So, and the problem too is when you have a really small hockey country, and Israel's not unique in this. You can take a country like Spain, Bulgaria, Mexico, some of these other countries, Serbia. The composition, meaning the number of clubs and who those clubs are in the National League, has a lot more fluidity to it than you would see in the EIHL or even the NIHL. Clubs fold, they leave, and then only do, say their junior and youth sections for a while. Then they come back when they get enough guys who are of age to start competing competitively again. So it's a little bit jumpy that way compared to a more established hockey country. But there are certain clubs that come back time and time again. Besides Bat Yam, there's the Rishon Devils. There's it's called CIHS Metula, which is the Canada-Israel Hockey School we had talked about earlier, where they have all those different initiatives. Those teams pretty much are always involved Then there were some teams that had been long-standing teams, such as Malot and Kfar Saba. Those are competitive clubs that just, at the moment, have decided not to participate, but hopefully they'll come back at some point. So that's what we're dealing with in the domestic league in Israel at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it's a very similar situation to a lot of the other leagues around the world. Obviously, we've seen the QMJHL in Quebec has been struggling with coronavirus cases, but they are playing. The OHL is thinking about taking out body checking and fighting. So when those big leagues, and obviously the NHL are trying to figure out what they're going to do, and the AHL is a bit sort of discussing or up in arms of trying to figure out how to go about their season as well. When those big, well-funded leagues are having issues, it's obviously going to be that the rest of the hockey world is going to have very similar issues. But obviously the problem is they don't have the funding to kind of find a solution to it, do they?
Yeah, no, I think the Israeli without getting into numbers, I think the Israeli Federation's entire budget to run the men's national team, the U20, the U18, all of its youth programs, the National League, and everything that goes along with it is less than the salary of a veteran AHL player, much less than a veteran NHL player. And that's to run hockey in the entire country with all of the clubs, all of the schools, the leagues, all of the different age groups, the national team program. Try doing that on less than say, $300,000-$400,000 American for an entire year. So what is that? 200,000 pounds? I mean,
something like that. Yeah.
250,000 pounds. Try running an entire country's hockey program on that. And but when you think about that, it does make me proud in the sense to see how far the Israeli national team has come and how far the league has come. I tell you, if you wanted to see some Israeli hockey, one of the things we're going to do with the society on the IsraelHockey.com site, there are, if you know where to look, clips, full games, and what have you all over the internet. So we're going to try and start compiling them and putting them both on the IsraelHockey.com website, as well as putting them on a YouTube channel so that people can enjoy it and get a feel for it. The site's going to have ultimately Hebrew and Russian language sections. But for now, we focused on English because English really is the language, the common tongue of the world, so to speak. So we've really focused on putting it into English first. So people in the UK and around the world who are interested in seeing it can jump on. And again, it's under construction at the moment, but there are little clips and bits and pieces of everything from the Israel U20 team, the men's team, some of that continental stuff that I had talked to you about. So it's on there now, some of it, so you can start getting a little feel for it.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. And I think obviously anybody watching that's kind of the fact that we're talking about Israeli hockey might have piqued their curiosity a little bit. So I'm sure we'll be able to find a way to give them the links on the show so they can go and check it out and see what they think. So I just wanted to talk about Eliezer Sherbatov, because you mentioned him slightly earlier in the episode. And for those long-time listeners that have been listening to the Europuck podcast since the very beginning or the first few episodes in, will know that we found his decision to sign with the Auschwitz hockey team in the Polish league a very interesting one. And we read a couple of interviews regarding him and kind of his thoughts on why he signed there and what his motivations were. I know, speaking to you before the episode, that you're quite familiar with Sherbatov and you're quite good friends with him. Is that correct? Yeah.
He's proudly Israeli and Jewish, and he took a lot of criticism in the certain quarters of the Israeli press, and one of the chief rabbis of Israel really got on him for signing. His attitude's a little different. Look, he's living the dream of many people to play pro hockey, and although he never made it to, say, the NHL level, he had one season in the KHL, and he's been kind of doing the tour of the European leagues like a lot of professional hockey players from North America do. And this was an opportunity for him that he felt was a good fit. And his feeling on it is that, what better way to show national and ethnic and maybe a little religious pride, but then to go to a place that was the scene of one of the greatest tragedies and crimes against really not only the Jewish people, but humanity. and go there and show that he's not afraid, and that the ghosts of the past are not going to rule who he is or who we are as a people today. And the reality too that I want to stress is that everybody at at the Unia club that he signed with in Auschwitz. What is it? I don't know if I can pronounce it. Ashwim.
It's Una Oshvashvim or something. I'll probably pronounce that awfully, but yeah, something like that.
For all of our Polish guests, I apologize for my horrible pronunciation. But what I did want to point out is that everybody in the town has been overwhelmingly positive to him. He has not experienced any kind of anti-Semitism. The fans have embraced him. Management has embraced him. His coaching staff and teammates have embraced him.
I think the fact that for myself and Chris personally, the fact that he's taken this opportunity to kind of take back a bit of history, we have nothing but respect for him on this show. And we really hope him the best. And we keep an eye out every single time, every week we go through the European League scores. We always take the effort to kind of single out Sherbatov and go, look, he's a point per game. Like, he's doing a really good job. We're kind of following the team and the league because of him,
Yeah, he's an electric player. He's a fun personality. He's a wild man, but he's a fun personality, and he's like me. I'm only, I don't know what this translates into metric wise, but I'm only 5'8". He's basically the same. He's a shorter guy. He's in a hell of a lot better shape than me. I mean, if you've seen him, he's a beast. He's in great shape. He's very strong, so he's hard to knock off the puck despite being short. He's got great skill, great heart, and he's a fun player.
I think as a UK fan myself, and kind of knowing the general feelings of the UK hockey fan base, we love the steps that are being taken, and we can see the potential that the game has here in this country, and we just want it to keep going. We can see that there's that snowball effect starting to take place. We just need to keep it up for the next, few years and see if we can get something going on,
Yeah, I just real quickly, I just saw off screen a message that Ariel Kapulkin was looking to join us. I don't know if he has the code, but do we have him?
I was just about to bring him in. I was just about to find a good spot where we could take a second. I'll just bring him in. So I'm joined here by Ariel. So hello, Ariel. How are you?
I'm doing very good.
Good. So could you just quickly just let us know who you are, what your experiences with hockey. I know you've mentioned, I've had a conversation with you and some of the other guys with Israeli hockey to get a bit of your background. But do you want to just let the audience know listening what your experience is with hockey and where you're playing at the moment and kind of your experience with the sport? And go for it.
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it. It's always awesome to tell my story. I feel like it's a very unique story, growing up in Israel without having hockey everywhere, like most of these Canadian boys and American boys are advocate to and used to. So it was very tough for me in the beginning because, I started playing hockey on rollerblades, and then the only rink was up in Metula, which was 3 hours away, and it wasn't a real possibility to drive up there and train like a normal kid. So I was pretty good at roller hockey, and at the age of 13, I decided to move into Canada to try. My parents supported me, and they gave me every opportunity that I could have asked for. And I started training with the Canadian kids 5 times a week, and slowly I got better and better. And once I realized that, I want to do something with hockey, I figured the best way is to go into college hockey. And I moved to America because of that, and I started playing junior hockey, and it's been a blast since. Junior hockey definitely helped me a lot and made me into more of a man. And it's just, I'm happy. I'm currently in Boston. It's a high-tech school that is located in downtown area. It's Division III NCAA, and it's everything that I could have asked for. We train here every day. We get to go to school. I'm living the dream at the age of 22, and it's awesome.
Which is perfect.
And
that's all you could ask, really, isn't it? That's all you could ask.
Yeah. Ariel, you're playing for Wentworth, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. So Ariel, I just wanted to ask. I think this is a question that everybody listening to this show will have. And Marc and I have had a bit of a discussion earlier in the episode talking about the infrastructure of Israeli hockey. And we've mentioned, obviously, the lack of facilities throughout the country and how that's slowly getting there, but still a long way off from being to where Boston is or where any of the big areas in Canada are. How did you get into the sport of hockey? What made you think, you know what, I want to try my best to go at this and have a good chance to play college hockey? What got you into hockey originally? What was the first sort of moment you remember where you think, you know what, hockey's really like cool, I like that?
It's different. It's like a different creature, this sport. You know, it's the combination of speed and skill. And maybe when you're young, you don't really understand it, but you sort of just fall in love with it. You really get addicted to this. I don't think there's one answer to this, but you know, it's.
I think for Israelis, it's a great sport because, first of all, you're in the Mideast. It's hot, and it's hockey is just, you know, you hear the blades biting into the ice. You get the mist coming off of the ice, and for me as a goalie, you know, you're down on your knees. You make a save, guys. You know, spray you with snow. A lot of people get angry about that. I love it. You know, it cools you off. It's the speed of the game, the camaraderie, the teamwork, and also the fierceness of it. I just think when you combine everything, it's a perfect sport for Israelis.
Did you find that you had to work a little bit harder than some of the other players? Did you have to put in more reps than some of the other players to be like, look, I might not be a Canadian that knew how to skate from the second they could walk. I'm not a person that's picked up a stick from the second I was born, you know. Like, obviously you mentioned how you started in rollerblades, so you didn't even get onto the ice until slightly later on into your love of the sport. Did you find that you had to really work a lot harder than some of the other people to get to where you are today?
Yeah, of course I did. And sometimes I felt like an opportunity was taken away from me because of it. The Canadian and the American boys, you know, they have their parents there right next to them on every decision. They have their family. They're talking to the coach. They're in the best relationship. And there comes this Israeli boy that, you know, is skating pretty well and is at their level and thinks the game pretty well. And, like, you know, he's got nothing wrong with him. But why would you give him the edge over him if, you know, you have a better communication with this guy and whatnot? So, of course, I felt it getting taken away from me. And also, it's of course.
It's kind of what Ariel's alluding to in the sense that if you're going to come as an import to a different league, you've got to be not only as good as the local guys, but you have to be better, because otherwise, why are they going to use up an import slot on you, right? So you really have to stand out. Ariel's been able to do that. You were playing with the Seahawks, right, Ariel?
Yeah.
Which league was that? Was that WSHL?
No, it's the Eastern Hockey League.
Oh, the Eastern. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Eastern is a Tier 3 USA hockey structure, but it's one of the best ones, if not the best one, in Tier 3. And, you know, Hayden, what we were talking about earlier, and Ariel, I don't know if you were listening before you jumped in, but in the North America, again, I keep saying North American, but in the United States university hockey pyramid, there's really 5 tiers. And for the most part, anyway, there's a couple of small independent loops, but it's basically 5 tiers. And NCAA D3, although the name would indicate otherwise, is really the second tier. It's right underneath D1, NCAA, and of course NCAA D1. You have guys stepping out immediately into the NHL, the AHL. So NCAA D3, where Ariel is playing. It's amazing for Israeli hockey supporters to see Ariel playing at that level, because there are NCAA D3 guys that go on and play pro in, you know, some of the lower to mid-tier European leagues. Just a year or two ago, one of the colleges in D3. Now, you got to remember, NCAA D3 has about 70 some odd schools, I think. So the level is different between the top and bottom teams, but some of the top D3 teams from NCAA have come across and beaten League Magnus teams, or at least in some games played competitively with them. They've beaten France D1, which is right under League Magnus and still pro. And then one of the teams, Oswego, came over a year or two ago and played HC Alleghe from the Italian league, beat them 8-2. And they crushed a whole bunch of Swiss D1 teams, which is the top amateur level in Switzerland. So it's really good hockey. And Ariel, it's amazing to see you play at NCAA D3 level. I think every Israeli hockey fan has to be thrilled to see that we're producing talent like Ariel now, because, you know, to get to play legitimate NCAA hockey is really NCAA D3 is semi-pro hockey level already. It's legitimate semi-pro hockey, and in some countries would be full-on pro level hockey. So it's a really good accomplishment, and we're hoping to see you get into some more minutes and some more games next season when it starts.
Thank you so much, Marc. I really appreciate it, because it was a long journey for me to come to D3, but in a way, now that I'm here, it doesn't feel like much. It doesn't feel like everything. I just want more and more and more, and I have 3 more years to go. And, you know, I just came back from practice now, and I feel like this year is starting a bit different. I'm feeling like I have more of a role. I'm feeling like, and if I can become that impact player this year and have another 2 years, like you said, maybe I can end up on some lower end European team to make a living to. It's just, you know, I really want to play hockey as long as I can, and I'm looking at any direction that will lead me there.
Well,
Isn't it? Yeah. So
yeah.
So for those of you watching the episode that might not be aware, I was going to actually make a similar parallel, because Marc was obviously mentioning not many Israeli players get to play D3. You know, to a lot of Israeli hockey fans, Ariel, you might be a bit of a trendsetter, you know, like a trailblazer, kind of doing something that not many hockey players from your country have necessarily done, and that's very much how we see Liam Kirk, for example. So for those of you who aren't aware, Liam Kirk became in 2018 the first British-born and completely British-trained player to be drafted at the NHL entry draft. He was taken in the 7th round, which, you know, towards the bottom of the draft, but as British hockey fans, we'll take it any day of the week.
I mean, of course, you guys had Tony Hand, so
of course
he could have played with Gretzky and Messier and Curry and Coffey and Edmonton, and just chose to come home, you know, but he certainly had the talent level to play in the NHL. He just chose not to.
Yeah, when Glenn Sather says to Tony Hand that he was the second smartest player at the training camp other than Wayne Gretzky, you know, like I made a video on him for my YouTube channel, which a lot of my the viewers on this show will obviously know. And I basically said, like, it's a very interesting situation with Tony Hand, because as hockey fans here in the UK, we're kind of like, why didn't he go and play with Edmonton? That would have been so good. But at the end of the day, like, he made the right choice for him. He obviously tore it up in the UK league for his entire career, and he only retired within the last half a decade. So the leading point scorer ever, and he's made great progress and done some great things for the GB national squad and our international system, which you could make the argument that if he was over there, he wouldn't have helped to make our international program where it is now. So, you know.
Well, he's a legend, and
yeah.
You know, to use him as a segue, I had mentioned Evgeny Gusin before. You know, he's and Ariel knows, you know, Goose. Everybody in Israel hockey knows Goose. You know, I want to say he's 51 or 52 now, so he's basically Tony's age, I guess, and a couple of years older than me. Like I said, he played in CSKA Moscow's minor system. He played with Kristal Electrostal. He was a longtime hero for the Israeli national squad. In fact, he basically carried them on his back in 2005 to a victory in Division 1 when Israel had actually made it up there. And then the next year in 2006 in Amiens, France, of course, Israel got to compete against France, GB. Germany at the time with Thomas Greiss in net and Marco Sturm and guys like that. And so, yeah, we got killed and sent right back down to D2, but we played. And, you know, what Evgeny Gusin is doing now is he's really helping, you know, he's the driving force really with us behind the Israeli National Hockey Society. And he owns and runs HC Bat Yam, which he used to play for, which again has been the class of the Israeli league for 3 of the past 4 seasons and competing in the Continental Cup. But he's got 2 initiatives that I really want to bring to light really quickly. One is you've heard potentially of a KHL game coming to Jerusalem.
Yep.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the Maccabiah games, but that is essentially the Jewish Olympics, where countries come from all around the world, just like the Olympics, only with mostly Jewish athletes, not all, but mostly. And there was, with some really nice donations from some NHL owners and from Gary Bettman himself in the NHL, they had transformed the arena in Jerusalem that Hapoel plays their basketball in for hockey. So the Maccabiah had 2017, they had hockey there. And of course, now that the facilities are in place to transform it when it's needed, the idea is to bring a KHL game to Jerusalem. Goosen, in his past experience playing in the CSKA system, is very good friends with Vyacheslav Fetisov.
Oh wow!
Who,
Okay.
Really doesn't need any kind of introduction to any hockey fan the world over. So Fetisov and Goosen are working with a group to put on this KHL game in Israel to gauge interest. Israel has about 8 million people, and about 1 million of them are from the former Soviet Union. So the market for hockey here in Israel could really explode if those 1 million people are exposed to truly high-end world-class hockey, which the KHL could provide. So the idea is to have a game. They were trying to get it for this December, but it looks like with coronavirus and everything, it's going to happen next year, unfortunately. But it's going to happen. And the deal is in place. And then, the other thing that is being bandied about is the possibility of a KHL franchise being put into Israel to tap into the Russian and former Soviet population that's here in Israel, 1 million strong. If they can get a KHL team in, Beijing, China, they have Kunlun Red Star in the KHL. And if they've had KHL franchises in other countries outside of Russia and outside of the former Soviet Union, which they have done, there's no reason they shouldn't be able to do it in Israel. And if you think about the distances for the travel, it's really not that far compared to the rest of Europe. So if they were thinking about either Jerusalem or Haifa to put a KHL club, and Evgeny Goosen's behind the initiative to see if that can happen. We don't know if it's going to happen, but they are trying. And at the very least, they're going to bring a KHL game to Israel to gauge interest, and it'll be super exciting. If, in fact, a KHL club does come to Israel, we're hoping that while that would obviously be the huge focus for Israeli hockey fans, having a team in the second best league in the world, we're really hoping that it would help as a springboard to really grow the Israeli domestic league and have some more interest in that league from the Israeli population. Now you'll see people anywhere from, 25 or 50 at a game to maybe 250, 300 at a game. The finals, Ariel, you can confirm this. I think in Holon at Ice Peaks in Holon, I think during the finals they can have 400 or 500 people maybe, but that's about as much as they get.
Yeah.
So if a KHL team came, we're hoping it could actually trickle down and help not only raise the level, but interest in the domestic league and maybe help with sponsors and everything else. And the last thing I did want to bring up, today, Hayden, was that one of the Israeli National Hockey Society's initiatives is that we're trying to put together a semi-pro level summer league in Israel along the lines of what they have in Australia or New Zealand, where they do it in the summer so that it doesn't conflict with other leagues. And then we're hoping, put you on the spot here a little bit, Ariel, we're hoping that we would get players of the caliber of Ariel, guys his age, guys who have not everyone has to have a connection to Israel, people who would be, interested in just seeing what the lifestyle is like in Israel and the weather and living on the beach in Tel Aviv with palm trees and getting to play some competitive hockey for the summer. Maybe someone who has a deep Christian faith might want to come and see where Jesus preached and walked. And also, of course, Jewish players from around the world who are of decent caliber and might be playing pro elsewhere. We'd like to try and attract them to come. The plan is originally for, a 4-team to 5-team small summer league, maybe a dozen games and then playoffs. But if we can launch that, we think it can ultimately really help grow the game in Israel.
But Omsk and CSKA Moscow always consistently at the top of the standings, both in the West and the East. So to get two very strong, established teams full of Russian stars, former NHL players, that's only going to do wonders for the game, and hopefully bringing the attention to sort of the potential of hockey in Israel, right?
Yeah, one would hope, and I think Ariel, did you play Maccabi?
I did. I just turned 18 and I played with the adults. Yeah.
You played in the Men's Open in 2017?
Yeah.
So
nice.
I think Ariel can tell you when they what's the name of the arena there in that Hapoel plays out of?
Well, Israel has an amazing basketball league, amazing, and the second best to Maccabi Tel Aviv is Jerusalem. They have a world-class facility, like locker rooms, and it was amazing. And to transfer that into a hockey rink was mind-blowing to have in Jerusalem. And I'm sure that all of the really good Maccabi players that came from the United States enjoyed it so much. And to have a KHL game there is more than surreal, because that arena. Yeah.
And you guys had some fans, though. I mean, there are tapes of the games. Hayden, I can send them to you, actually, and
sure.
We'll get them up. We'll get them up on the Society's site. But I have, I know you guys played, Russia sent a team to Maccabi in 2017 that consisted of, it was a mix of VHL, their third league, what is that, Prevea Liga, and then they had, the top Russian junior league, the MHL.
Yeah. So
their roster was a combination of VHL, Prevea Liga, and MHL guys. And, they beat the Israeli national team, but they played them twice and they won both times, but once was the bronze medal game, unfortunately. But Ariel will tell you that we were in those games. They didn't blow us out.
Yeah.
They were, what was it, 7-4 and something like that? I don't remember the other score, but one was, they were within a couple of goals. And you guys had some fans, right? I mean, the arena wasn't full because a lot of Israelis didn't necessarily know about it, but I think there was at least a section or two in the arena that was just jam-packed with fans, and they were chanting. I mean, you can expand on that, Ariel, and let Hayden know, what the atmosphere was like for you.
Please do. Please do.
Well, Canada and the U.S. during the gold medal game, I don't know if you guys know, they had over 10,000 fans, and it was
wow.
an event. It was one hell of an event, really. Us between Russia playing the bronze medal game, we thought we had him because we lost the last game 7-4, and it was pretty tight, and we felt like, we were a bit younger, we had more legs, but yeah.
It happens, but you guys had a couple thousand fans, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Look, when you're in a huge arena like that and you only have a couple thousand fans, it seems empty. But the reality is, for hockey in Israel, to go from, your typical league game with 200 people attending a game to all of a sudden having, 1,500 or 2,500 fans to support the national team, that's a step, right? And everything's a step. So if all of a sudden we can go and get a KHL game where people jam the arena, and now all of a sudden there's a domestic league that, while certainly not of the same caliber, is on the rise. If we can start getting, in the little rink in Holon, 500 people a game instead of 50 people a game or 200 people a game, it's a start. And all you can ask for is steps. And that's really what we're looking to build.
I think kind of getting people, getting the sport in people's minds and going, look, we have a professional league here in Israel. We have some pretty good hockey players here. Oh, and then let's have a look at some of the other players that are like Ariel, for example, that are playing D3 hockey over in Boston. That all comes from getting those people in the stands. And I think the details that Marc mentioned with the KHL game, that's going to do wonders for a program like the Israeli hockey program. Because, I mean, like you mentioned, there's a huge influx of people from the former Soviet Republic and Russia that have been that have moved to Israel. So if they can tap into that market and the Israelis there, because like we mentioned, you get people into the stands, they enjoy it. bringing two of the best teams on this side or your side of the continent over in Israel, that's going to do wonders. And I think it's a slow burn. It's a really slow burn. But once it starts to pick up momentum and snowball a little bit, that's when you start to see all the progress. Would you say that's fair, Marc?
I do. The only thing I do want to point out is, we don't have a pro league in Israel. The National League is still an amateur level league. Like I said, it's basically like collegiate club, intercollegiate club, and junior B type level. But we are looking to do that summer league because it's a smaller amount of teams and a more compressed schedule at a time of the year where it doesn't really interfere with other higher level leagues. We're hoping to attract a semi-pro caliber to that summer league. And in turn, if somebody falls in love with Israel and playing hockey there, maybe they'll want to stay in the domestic league. Again, the only thing is, it's like anything else in hockey or any sport, it's money. So what we need to do is really attract corporate sponsorship and some benefactors that care about the country who happen to be hockey fans that have the ability and desire to help it grow. In order to do that, I think even if the level of play is still considered amateur, if we got Hayden, somebody like yourself, to come for the summer league, and we had some high quality live video streaming, some maybe even getting something on television in Israel. Really, it just needs to be exposed to a wider base. The 2013-2014 Israeli League Championship game is the only time that Israeli League hockey has been televised to a Israeli national audience on TV.
Wow.
Israel channel, TV channel 9. It was a Russian language broadcast, but they did the whole game the same way you would see an EIHL or even an NHL game. They did it, and it attracted a lot of attention at the time. The issue is, how do we get, for the Israeli domestic league and for this summer league that we're planning, how do we get that on Israeli television? How do we get the newspaper beat reporters to start covering it? How do we, if we can't even get that, at least not yet, how do we get a high quality live stream on a YouTube channel and promote it through social media so that enough people know about it and they want to watch it? And that's one of the reasons I'm doing something like this podcast today, is because we want to get the word out there. And one of the ways we're doing that is through, the society with IsraelHockey.com.
Yeah. So for a kid like Ariel, who's a really damn good hockey player, if you get some young, exciting guys into play in Israel, and then you bring in some imports as well, that's really going to create interest, because now you've got some world-class players coming in from other parts of the world, but you've also got some world-class Israeli kids who, can connect to the public, speak to them in their language, and really give them something, as especially the kids in the youth camps. That's the other thing. When you're training kids to play the game and they're falling in love with the game, it's hard for them to ultimately take that next step if they have nobody to look up to and nothing to aspire to. So in Israel, it's always been, you aspire to the national team. Well, now, if you can aspire to the national team, but also say, oh, heck, I want to go play for, Bat Yam one day, or I want to play for the Rishon Devils, I want to play for CIHS Metula. If they see
or I want to play
guys
college hockey. I'm sorry? They can say, I want to play college hockey too.
That's right. But I mean,
exactly.
They can go do that overseas and improve and come back. But once you do that, Ariel, the whole thing is, though, you want Israeli kids to say, hey, there's somewhere for me to play in my own country that's worthwhile after I'm done with college, or I'm done with junior, or I'm done training in Europe. It's great because not everybody's going to be able to be a pro hockey player in Europe. Most of the world can't. And look, most of the world's not going to get to play in the domestic league in Israel either. But if you've got a kid who can actually play, and maybe not make it to the level of the EIHL in Britain, or certainly the KHL, but they still want to play legitimate competitive hockey
and actually be recognized for it and have fans and have people in the news paying attention to it, then growing the Israeli domestic league is something that's essential for that, so that kids, look, again, take an Israeli kid who can play hockey. Not everyone's going to make the national team of a country. So if all of a sudden they at least have something to aspire to in a league where it's an accomplishment to at least make one of those teams, that starts to build the interest. And I think that avenue needs to be there for them. And then if you have somebody that's even better, like yourself, maybe you play there and then you move on to a pro league in Europe, or you play NCAA hockey. And so the different levels are there. And it's not just you play youth hockey and then you hit a wall, because if you're not a truly elite player to go play NCAA hockey or pro in Europe, at least there's something that's legitimately good hockey to still aspire to and have people pay attention to.
Marc, there is one thing that I did want to ask you about before we finish up in a little while, and that's the jersey behind you. You mentioned before we started recording the episode that you had a very funny story, or a very interesting story that you wanted to tell about that jersey. So take it away.
It's an old jersey. This is the logo that used to be used by the national team. They now use a dove with a Star of David superimposed in the background and a hockey stick. We're actually in my living room right now, but my wife is kind enough to let me put that on the wall. But it's that when you marry a girl who's a hockey fan, it's a good thing. I'm just going to say that to all the hockey fans out there.
Definitely.
But this jersey actually was Evgeny Gusin's jersey.
He
wore this jersey with the national team, and Israel in 2005, when they won the Division 2 championship and made it up to the Division 1, where, as you know, again in 06 they played France, GB, Hungary, Japan, Germany. To get ready, the national team played the Spartak Cup with Spartak Moscow. They had the Vienna Capitals from Ibel, and they had, the Austrian league, and they had Neman Grodno from the Belarusian league, who, as you're probably familiar with, plays Champions League all the time.
Yep, as do Vienna.
Yep. And the Israeli team went in, and surprisingly, they didn't get completely demolished. Spartak beat them 6-0. Lost to Neman 4-2, but had a 2-1 lead, and lost to Vienna 4-3. And Gusin wore that jersey in the tournament. When I was asked to play the exhibition games in North America, these jerseys were recycled in the sense that they were laundered and sent over for use by the national selects team that we were on. And so I got to wear the jersey that Evgeny Gusin wore in Spartak Cup, and I got to play against MIT, Ferraro Brothers USA Selects, which was Peter and Chris Ferraro, former Rangers and Islanders, put together ex-Rangers, Islanders, and Devils. So I got to use it in that game, and I got to use it in the game against the Dallas Stars alumni. And when that Dallas game was over, the Federation gifted the jersey to me. So I had it framed, and it's my little way of being connected to an actual legend of Israeli hockey. So I'm very grateful to Evgeny and the Federation for letting me keep it. And my own little hockey journey in some ways connected to Evgeny Gusin through that jersey. So it occupies a place on my wall in my living room, and I'm proud to have it.
I've got to say, I love that jersey. I mean, as jerseys go, that is a very good-looking one. I love, both the logo on the arm and on the front of the jersey. I mean, you can get some jerseys out there, especially international ones, that are kind of questionable, but I really do like that one. I've been glancing at it the entire episode, being like, that is a nice jersey.
I appreciate it. They have the repros of them available on the site, theisraelhockey.com.
Oh, really?
So if anybody is interested in purchasing a jersey, one of the things that the website does, it's not for profit, and the money all goes to support the grassroots hockey initiatives in Israel that we've been talking about this afternoon. So if anybody is interested, that's my plug for IsraelHockey.com. Just go into the shop.
The last question I have, and this can be answered by either of you. What's next for Israeli hockey? What's next for what are the big plans that either Ariel, you have at D3 with Boston? Are you hoping to have a good season with the team? Marc, have you got any big plans coming up that are in the works, or something that's been recently announced that's going to happen over the next coming weeks and months, maybe the rest of the year? What kind of the big things that you guys have to look forward to, both in your own careers or within your own bubble of Israeli hockey, or the wider sport as a whole? Like, what you guys got to look forward to?
Well, I think for my end, it's really, now at 49 years old, there's no more career to speak of, but there's, the Israeli National Hockey Society has taken a lot of my focus right now, because it really is a great organization to really help on so many different levels, between the federation, the National League, the Summer League that we're trying to create, the individual clubs, the schools. It really does help on so many different levels. So, that's really what my focus is on at the moment. I think for the national team, look, as you know, the World Championships were canceled, so Israel hockey, like everybody else, will regroup and come back next year. They're going to play in Division 2A. And then, I think for Bat Yam, who is the defending National League champions, they're going to look to try and win the league again, because, the ultimate goal for an Israeli club is to play in the Continental Cup through the IIHF and get to play against other European champions. So I think that's the goal for Israel hockey as a whole and myself, and I'll let Ariel close it out.
Well, I think we're heading into the right direction, all of us, everyone involved with Israeli hockey. It's just England and Israel, hockey is written all over us. It's a sport that's intelligent, just like our communities. It's a sport that doesn't need us to be 6'4", 6'5" monster athletes. We can be ourselves. We can, perform very well at the sport because it's played on the ground. I believe in my opinion, facilities is what's next for Israeli hockey. The facilities, that's what we've always been struggling on. The facilities will get everything.
So as far as first guests go on the Europuck podcast, gentlemen, you have been fantastic guests for me today. I would love to have you on the show at any other time. If you want to come back on, you've got something exciting to talk about. There's a new venture that you guys are taking on. Ariel, if you're having a really good season and you want to kind of come back on and say, I told you so, then feel free. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming out. And I really appreciate you coming to not only educate me, but educate our entire audience base on Israeli hockey and what the sport is like for you guys over there. So thank you once again, guys.
It's well, as in Hebrew, toda rabah, English, thank you. I really appreciate you having us, and it's been a pleasure. Would be only too happy to visit again.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys.